first tool I wanted to share is Git Lens, and this is a Visual Studio Code extension. So what is it? Yeah, it's a plugin and allows you to quickly see into Git history. It also adds to VS Code's built-in Git functionality. So let me show it, give you a demo of it. So I have checked out the React code base. All right. So what you immediately see is when I go to a line, I have the information over here on the right as to what the last committer was. So as I change lines, it just shows me whatever the last committer was on that line. If I go to the top of the file, you can see who the last author was. So if I click on this, like it takes me into inline blame view. And the other thing is if you hover over these inline commit messages, you get a bunch of detail about what the commit is. So these are links that take you to, like I think this one takes you to like a commit browser where you can see what the files that were changed were. Let me go to shorter commit here. You can actually link out to GitHub, or it supports other systems as well. Actually, you see the details of the commit. So quickly able to drill into something. I've been using it for since, well, a little over a year now, and I can't imagine not using it. So, or not having it. It's just really helpful just to always have it there. So the other thing it gives you is it gives you a sidebar. So this is the thing it adds, right? This icon right here. So if we open this, you get like a repository view, a detailed view of this file, detail of the line, and then you can compare the different things, and then you can search through commits. I personally don't use this sidebar as much because I'm a pretty heavy Git command line user, but it's kind of nice if you want it. The other thing it gives you is you have a bunch of Git Lens commands as you'd expect, but if you do Git commands, it takes you into this like command palette where you can do the normal, the normal operations. I don't personally use this, but if you like this sort of thing, it adds to Visual Studio Code. Like VS Code has its own Git functionality, but according to the documentation, like this is a little bit more focused than some of the built-in ones. But I can't vouch for it myself. I just use a command line. I don't use any of the GUI tools for that. But that's kind of the three things it gives you. Again, for me, the real value is I can immediately just drill into history on the current line. That's sort of the killer feature for me. Any questions about that?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome because like I use VS Code, but I don't have any. I just use the default Git functionality in it. I'm always missing blame, and it's aggravating.
Yeah,
this is perma blame.
Yeah. I mean, it allows you to see history at all times, which is kind of cool. Another related thing, and I think GitLab has something for this, but I tend to use a different extension. It's called Open Anywhere. So a lot of times I'm communicating with my coworkers throughout the day, and they'll say, oh, how does this one thing work? Well, I can quickly open my editor, navigate to whatever file, like even go to a specific line, like say I wanted to talk about, I don't know, this create portal function. So I can say open in GitHub, and this is a separate extension, but if I do this, then it just takes me right to that specific line in GitHub, and I can just take this URL and send it to them over chat, and it really speeds things up. So that extension, I believe, is called Open Anywhere, but I have it in the presentation, what it's actually called. Yeah, Open in GitHub. So that's the extension. It's not just GitHub. It supports like all the major ones. So The other thing that's nice about it to save you a little bit of time is there's a way to like just copy the link to your clipboard if you don't actually want to open it in your browser. So these are like the 2 Git commands I rely on the most in VS Code, or the 2 extensions I rely on the most. All right. So the next presentation is a little bit more detailed, but I was doing some Git analysis about a month ago, and I found some cool things that I wasn't aware of, so I wanted to share that. So this is about, who has done what with this repo, right? That's the first question I want to answer. So the git shortlog command will actually summarize all of the commits on a repo, and you give it ranges as well. But this is kind of how the man page describes it. So I'll give a demo of this, but maybe 1 sec. Let me reload this. Okay. But that reminds me. Don't just dump your Git logs and call it your release notes. This is a pet peeve of mine, so I'm going to tell you about this. This is rude. Your changelog should be written for humans. And so apparently, I just discovered this recently too. There's this website called Keep a Changelog that goes into way more detail about this. And the quote from their website is, "Don't let your friends dump Git logs into changelogs." It's annoying, and yeah, that's the end of my public service announcement. But the point is, like, your changelog should be consumable by the people that are using your software, and ideally, you want to tell them what changed and what the breaking changes were. Right? They want their goal in life is not to spend all of their time using your software and getting to know its intricate details. Their goal is to solve a problem. So Ralph likes to say, don't annoy your users. Dumping your Git logs into your changelog is a way to annoy your users. Don't do that. Okay, but going back to the tool real quick, one of the things that you can do that's kind of cool is, again, you wouldn't necessarily generate your changelog this way, but if you were on a team and you wanted to see, like, hey, what are all the commits per author going into release? Like, I already know this stuff in pretty good detail. Here's how you can do that. So let's go ahead and run this for React. All right. So there we go. So it's a pretty minor release, right? Probably just a bug fix or something, but it gives you a nice summary of all the changes that by author that were included in that release. So you can give it any branch, any tag. Right? In this example, these are just 2 release tags, but you can do any sort of combination that you would expect in Git. So this is kind of cool too. So if you want to see all commits by author, you can run this. It's just like a summary view. This for this repo. So I think, let me move the zoom bar real quick. Yeah, this gives you kind of in whatever order it wants. So if we sort that, a little bit more interesting. You can quickly see who the top committers on React are. And if you're familiar with the project, none of these names are a big surprise at the bottom. One of the things that is also interesting to note is it has a very long tail, as you would expect from a big open source project, right? Because you have a lot of people that are fixing minor bugs or doing documentation pull requests. So a lot of people have one commit. Not many people have more than 10, right? So kind of a cool thing. All right, so let me walk you through another use case that I had in a different set of tools. All right, so my use case what really got me started in all this is how much to spend on continuous integration parallelism. So we spun up automated tests on a new project, set them up in Circle CI, and we wanted to know, like, hey, how much time are we going to spend waiting, or other people going to spend waiting for their CI builds to finish? So I wanted to do some analysis to figure that out. And really what the question boiled down to is how many commits per day are there on this repo? Because that's kind of a good proxy of how often CI will be running. So here's how I did that. I can show you the output of this, but I didn't use a shortlog command. I just used a normal git log command, and I just combined it with some other things. I'll kind of walk you through it, but let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so here we go. So this basically gives you a count per day of commits. If we break that down a little bit, the initial, let's actually add that grunt back. So I only care about 2020, so we'll see what like the tail of this looks like. So what it gives you is one line per commit with the date formatted this way. All right. So then if we sort that, which probably doesn't need to be, but I'm just so used to doing sort and unit together, I did it. And then we use the unit command, it'll actually count, it'll uniquely count all of these dates. So when I did all of that stuff, that's what gave me like the count per day of commits. So again, like the sort and the Unix-C, that's pretty much an idiom. So if you're newer to Unix shell stuff, like just you'll get used to that. You'll do that a lot. All right, so that was kind of cool. And then I figured out something even neater. So I had all these numbers. So I was like, it'd be nice if I had some statistics on that. So I searched for like how to, get statistics on numbers on the command line, and I found GNU datamash, which is what this does. So I will show you some stats on that. Just run this real quick. So it just builds on the other command. The stuff in bold is the stuff I added. So there you go. So on average, there are 5.2 commits per day on this repo. And that's not really true, because I'm sure there are like some weekend days or whatever, or holidays that had 0 commits. So if I wanted to be really thorough, I would write something that calculates all the possible days in the year and then merges that together. But for my use case, like I don't really care about days that have no activity, because for queuing in CI, like that doesn't really matter too much. This was for work, so we generally work Monday through Friday. So those were the days I really cared about. But it's cool that datamash exists, so I can easily run these stat functions. So I was pretty excited about that. It's like, where was this command all my life? So yeah, it has a bunch of stat functions. If I look up the docs for it. So yeah, here you go. So here are all the stat functions it gives you. And then you have some, numeric stuff like you'd expect. You can do like per line checksums and that sort of thing. It also has some ability to like check an input file to see like what records don't have the expected number of columns and that sort of thing. So it's like a kind of a neat tool that I will definitely keep around. So again, just looking at this command, all I really added was this Ruby stuff. All this is doing is taking the white space out of the line, because we go back up a bit. We take a look at this. It had like this leading white space. So I stripped that out with Ruby. And then I just extracted the first column with cut, right? Because I knew the delimiter between these two is space, and then I just piped that to datamash. So yeah, if you give a list of like line separated numbers to datamash, it knows what to do with it.
In the old days, we used awk to do that.
I know. And I saw people recommending awk, and I was like, oh, sure, but I bet there's something a little bit more focused. And I learned awk a little bit. I never got good at it because I was always able to use Ruby or Perl to do these little transforms. So, yeah, so that's one of the reasons I never really got good at awk. But when I originally did this, I used Perl to do it. I actually translated this to Ruby because I work with a bunch of Ruby developers, and I thought they'd be confused by the Perl command. But the Perl command is almost identical to this. So if you understand the command line options for Perl, you'll understand the Ruby ones. So I like to joke that Ruby is Perl 6, and this is one of the reasons why, because the command line options are so similar. A lot of things are really similar, right? It's just cleaner object orientedness, a lot of other benefits, but going between the two, there's a lot of similarity. So yeah, thank you. And I always remind people of this. Please take the broadband survey. It will help us all out. All
Hey,
right.
I do have a question. If you go back to, I don't know, this might have been the second tool you were looking at, you did a Git log, or I think it might be in the slide deck. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
But you were talking about change logs, and that's that can be a huge problem. And I saw one of the change logs was annotated with, I don't know, I think it might be a common thing, but like a verb and then paren something else. So it's like, what group of functions, maybe it was the one you ran, but it was like, what group of functions do you, like this is a bug fix, or it's a this, or it's a that. And I know that some places have, some open source projects have like Git post or pre-commit hooks that force your message to have certain content in certain formats. And I was wondering if you had ever, if anybody is really militant about their commit. Yeah, it was one little element. I think it was a result of the short log, wherever you ran that.
Yeah, I can run it again because I know what you're talking about. I
think it's the first short log you ran because it was a delta between those two versions.
Yeah, I'll run that again.
And I only saw one instance of it in here, and it's very interesting that somebody would see the fixed React-DOM. So like you group your stuff by fix or feature or whatever with paren, and then that's like the class of what you're fixing. So like there's a list of things you can fix, of groups of stuff you can fix. And I thought it was interesting that there was only one of those here. You think that, but somebody must be in the habit of just doing that.
Yeah, when I ran it for the whole repo, I saw a lot of common things, but I mean, okay, one of the things, like, this is a GitHub feature. If you mention a ticket in a pull request, it has some syncage. It syncs between the two, and I think like when you close the pull request, by default, it will close the ticket. But I mean, I see a lot of fixed space, but nothing too.
Yeah.
You mean Git issue? An issue in Git?
Yeah, it's an issue. That those pound things and numbers are issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that there was only one there. But
yeah, I didn't look at like any of the, like for a lot of the big open source projects, they'll have, like when you create an issue or create a pull request, they'll have some automated thing that comes in and says like, oh, you need to format it this way and do all these other things, right?
Right.
Like almost a checklist of things you need to do. But I didn't do that with React, but I know that Rails has that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't like. I don't know of anyone that's using commit hooks for message enforcement, but I could definitely see that happening. Like, one of the things that we do at work is we always have a reference to like a ticket number or a story number in the message, but it's mostly just enforced by convention rather than a tool. Does anyone else use any sort of automated thing to do that?
No, I played with it and I try to use a similar syntax, but in general, or the change logs are either we don't bother with them, or because a lot of it's just applications, right? So, and it's not something that we give to end users anyway.
Right.
Or if it's an internal library, and then there's, like you said, if there's breaking versions or you broke something, right? So you go to the next major release or what, minor release or whatever. It's good to document that. But
Yeah, I can show you an example of a changelog I really like.
it's all manual.
This is my company's GitHub, and one of the other developers and I. This is actually his changelog, but I go to this gem, I believe, and look at the changelog. Yeah, additions, changes, fixes. Let's see how it's all like clear. Section headings.
Yeah.
This one doesn't have it, but there's another one that has like breaking changes, I think. Oh, here you go. Breaking changes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, arguably we should make that top above additions, but
Alphabetical order.
Yeah, right. So
yeah, it's nice.
So we had the other developer and I had started doing this, and then I saw that you use a changelog site that I mentioned in the slides, but
yeah, it's nice.
So
yeah, I was just gonna chime in. There's a lot of repos where I work where there's like hooks that are configured to enforce like ticket tracking systems are included in messages. There's other things I do too, where like I'm like a primary reviewer on repos, so I usually am not like very militant about making people reword their commit messages, but I oftentimes will rename the pull request so that at least the merge commits from the pull request sort of follow a format. Like usually they include what part of the repo is changing, because we have some large repos with like a lot of different components in them. So that kind of helps keep things organized, at least for me when I'm preparing change logs and things later.
Yeah, I'm a stickler on good pull request descriptions.
Fix. Next.
Right. Fixes bug.
No, don't even tell it that it's a bug. Fix.
Right, fix. Made some changes.
Enhancement.
Yep.
Updated the thing, or just update.
So anyway, these were some of the things that some of the tools I've discovered recently or have been valuing for a while. So is there any other tools anyone wants to share?
Ryan, I had something. Explain show if we have time.
Sure. Yeah.
But I will give the caveat that I've never shared my screen on Zoom, so I will give it a try.
Yeah, you did. I remember your kids popping out through your background before.
Yeah, I might need tech support from the kids on this one.
First,
On the subject tools, from my presentation I gave last month, I've really been playing around with the Arduino, and I've really learned how limited their IDE is. And I think Ron had discussed using Genie, and I started reading around about doing a integration of the Arduino IDE into the Genie environment. It was pretty messy. I didn't have any success, but if someone out there is really good with Genie, or maybe that's something I ought to give a presentation on, but I'd really like to get more experience with that tool. It's pretty good. I've been happy with it.
So the thing with doing that in Genie, you would have to get the command line package for Arduino.
Okay.
Because you'd have to somehow wire all those hooks in. but the Arduino people have sort of hinted that they are going to abandon their IDE, and the next generation will just be a plugin for Eclipse,
Yeah. Okay.
which shakes a lot of people.
Yeah, I didn't
But,
want to hear that either. But
So for the Arduino, there's a command line package that allows you to compile and upload.
okay.
So, and you might be able to. Genie is an extremely lightweight IDE, but it's got some cool features. I would think that somebody might have made those additions to call the external command line tools, but I'm not sure. I just run the classic IDE Linux box in the lab, and works good enough.
So one of the things that I found out going back and forth between Genie as an editor and then going back to the Arduino IDE to do the compile is that if you make a change to your source code in Genie and you go back to the Arduino IDE, it's totally stupid that a change was made to the open file. However, if you make a change in an open file in Arduino IDE and go back to Genie, Genie says, oh, a change has been made, detects it, and allows you to reload. So that IDE is not monitoring the file system for any file changes, it appears.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd want to do a hybrid approach, but if you look at the documentation for Genie, it's pretty well laid out on how to put hooks in for a particular. I got Genie to understand a proprietary language that I created pretty quickly. Like within 45 minutes, I had set up all kinds of stuff to enable the code completion, and it's also got a mechanism in for template building.
Okay.
So
I might be asking you questions offline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, can you guys see my browser window?
Explainshell.com?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so this will be a quick one, but I've been getting some mileage out of the site lately. And just as an example, I pulled some things that Ryan was throwing up quickly through his presentation. Like, for example, what is Ruby-NE for those of us that don't use Ruby from the command line? We can see. See how it'll go through and explain all the command line parameters that it knows about, basically. So in this case, it recognizes the -NE. And here's another one with the sort and the unique -C. So, you might be familiar with grep and sort, but I've never seen unique -C. And we can see down here, it's helpful telling us C means count prefix lines by the number of occurrences. And then here's one real world example. I have a sysadmin at where I work, and he gave me a command line to run in Slack. I'm like, what is that? And so, if you want to tail the log file, but then he piped it to CCZE. Okay, I've never heard of that before. It looks really weird. What is CCZE? And it is a robust log colorizer. So basically, it takes some log file that you're tailing and will just colorize it for you to make it easier to read as it's scrolling by. And so a lot of times you're watching someone who's familiar with certain Unix tools that you may not be familiar with. You just throw it in explain shell, and a lot of times it will be handy and explain things to you.
Does it tell you what package CCZE is part of? Because I don't think that's a standard tool.
This, I don't think so. So what happens if I click on this? It just gives you more about CZE, but it's not telling you where it's coming from. I know that it's available for install on CentOS, which is what we were using at the time. So that's a simple one, because a lot of times you can read the man page and you type man unique or whatever, and then there'll be like 100 options, and you're interested in -C. Okay, the example you saw someone use okay, they use -C, and you got to scroll through the man page, and -C is in the middle of 100 other options. So this explain shell, it's web-based, and it'll just focus on the parameters are actually being used in your example there. So I've been getting some mileage out of it. I just wanted to share it.
Yeah, most man tools use the less pager, so you can just search forward. Just type in the /-C. It should take you to the first one.
Yeah, those man pages, though, some of them can be quite overwhelming. And what Rand shows here is just you're looking at some command, and you just want to know what options they're using and a little explanation, and this gets you right to it.
Yeah, this is great. Just the whole visualization of it. You don't even need to search for it. Thanks for sharing. This is awesome.
Yeah, sure thing. I also got some mileage out of it with TCP Dump. Had a guy using TCP Dump with a bunch of options. I'm like, I have no idea what you're doing. But I don't have that handy. It's on my other browser history, so I can't share that one. But, all right, that's all I had.
Anything else anyone wants to share?
I got something. I don't know if anybody uses, let's see, screen 2. Sure. If anybody uses the Intellij Suite, so here's, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Everybody still there?
Yeah.
All of a sudden my screen went black. I was seeing the end of the world in front of me. So this is a plugin. So Intellij has good support for basic stuff, but then a lot of their language features and other things are implemented using plugins. And there's a lot of third-party kind of things that just show up. The one I actually gave money to the guy because it's so useful is string manipulation. And so you have all these different options. Escaping, so here we'll escape JSON, right? Boom. Okay, that's easy. Today I just had to use it. I got back a file from our IT guy that had a bunch of spaces in it, and they're like, well, I wonder if string manipulation can fix that. Well, okay, fine. Filter, remove, trim, remove empty lines. I mean, I'm sure there's other tools to do that, but if you're working inside an Intellij environment, this is very handy. The other thing we use it a lot for is Encode to base 64. Okay, think. And then decode and whatever. So I'm sure there's equivalents for VS Code, that kind of thing, or maybe it's even built in. I don't know, but I find this super helpful.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that example you just gave with the removing the blank lines, I had to do something like that, and actually Notepad++ had that's a really great program, and I was able to find something quickly to do that. Yeah,
you can use regular expression foo, I think, to detect new lines and remove them and stuff, but this is a lot easier.